the undo parameters related to, initialization parameters related to the undo table space. We already know one, which is the undo retention. Undo retention is equal to, I think the default value is 900 seconds. Is it 900 or 300? 900. I think it is 900. Yeah, it is 900 seconds. It means that your undo will not be overwritten by any other transaction for 900 seconds after it gets expired. That is what undo retention is. You keep the parameter of this, you keep the value of this to a higher level if there are multiple queries in your database that are going to take more than 900 seconds. So at least those queries will not get snapshot to old error. So that is the first parameter. Then the second parameter that we already know when we created the database was undo table space. Undo table space, the name of the table space. This has to be the undo table space that you create during the database creation or maybe a little later. This is where all the undo activity is going to happen. Then we are going to talk about undo underscore management. Undo underscore management is equal to, there are two values, auto and manual. Now we used to do a lot of manual undo management in the older days, but starting from 9i it is recommended that you go with undo management is equal to auto. Now what is the meaning of this undo management is equal to auto? First thing is, when everything is automatic. And what is that everything? Everything means, number one is the undo segment will be assigned to me automatically. Okay, undo segment will be assigned to my transaction automatically, which was also there in the older days. But then if for some reason I want an undo segment not assigned to me by the database, but I want undo segment number 4, I don't want undo segment number 2, I want undo segment number 4, then can I do that? And first thing, why I would need it? Because in certain situations when the undo table space management is manual, you can decide the initial extents. Right now the initial extents are only 2. You can decide the initial extents are going to be 10. You can decide the maximum number of extents that this undo segment is going to have is 300 or 400. You can decide the sizes of the extents. You can decide how fast they will grow. In a sense, if the first extent is 1 megabyte, the second may be 3 megabyte, the fourth one may be 4 megabyte. You can likewise increase the size of the extents as the growth happens. So sizing is determined by the commands that the DBA will execute. Which segment to assign to whom, that can be decided by the DBA. So that is also automatic. And the most important thing, that is also manual. So manual. So what is manual? In manual, the sizes of the extents, size of the extents inside that segment. The manual would be which segment to assign to a transaction. This is also decided manually with certain commands, and then I will write down somewhere here now. We see the shrinking of undo segments. What is the shrinking of undo segments? Here is the thing to kind of remember. As undo is required more and more, the growth will happen, because you require more space to keep your undo. After the commit has happened, all that growth that has happened by adding more extents, that is not required anymore. So the undo segment will shrink. It will shrink to what size? It will shrink to what is called as the optimal size, and that optimal size has to be decided by the DBA. What is the optimal size and all that stuff. So all those things, I don't want to go into those details, but what is the optimal size to which it will shrink? What is the size to which it will grow? What are the sizes? All that stuff was actually decided by the DBA, which was a very cumbersome process, and therefore it is always recommended, a good thing, to set up undo management is equal to auto. So all those things are not done there. But in some rare cases, I will tell you, but in some rare cases we still use the undo management is equal to auto, and that case I will just mention to you. But that's a rare case. But this is what undo management is equal to manual. Okay. Now here is one thing. You know that you are going to delete some huge amount of data from your table, and for that is going to happen tonight. It's going to happen in nightly batch job, which is written by PLSQL guys, and then you require a huge amount of undo table space for that specific transaction. Okay, so what you could do for that one session, you can say alter session set undo management is equal to manual. Undo management is equal to manual, and then you can specify that I need, okay, I don't have that syntax here, but then if I remember correct syntax here, then set, it is not alter session set undo. No, I need to see the syntax. It's been a long time that I have done it. But I will give you the syntax in a minute. But basically you specify that the undo segment for this transaction is going to be that undo. The name of the undo segment is undo maybe 4. Each undo segment has a name. So you specify that now my undo management is manual, and now for this transaction my undo segment is going to be undo 4. And why undo 4? Because you have already created that undo segment. Why undo 4? Because that undo segment has a huge number of extents already created. The growth is there. So since you want to delete a huge amount of data, you prefer a huge undo segment which is already created, and therefore your deletes would be faster. And you will not have any problems with the sizing of the undo. So that could be one of the reasons why you would still use alter session set undo management is equal to manual. Let me see if I can find that command. Undo. No, I don't have that command here with me. It is alter system set. No, I will give you that command a little later. But that is what that command is, which will actually tell that for this transaction my undo segment is going to be a different one. So this is the only way or only reason why you would use the manual.
For only huge deletes you can use that.
Yeah, I mean that is one of the reasons. If you want a specific undo to be assigned to your transaction, then this is a way to do it. Because in older days, we used to create the undo segments on your own. So some undo segments will be smaller, some undo segments will be bigger. Nightly batch jobs will use the bigger undo segments. Daily transaction jobs will use the smaller undo segments, because they will just have one small delete or one small update and commit. The huge amount of data that would get deleted in the night would use the huge undo segment. But all that is, still it is not required. Oracle internally manages that very well if you say undo management is equal to auto. So that need is not felt anymore these days with the new parameters over there. Okay. So this is what the undo initialization parameters were, and now the one last couple of commands there is the retention. Retention has to be guaranteed. In certain situation, we would like to guarantee the retention. What is the retention again? After the commit has happened, that means after the transaction has finished, that is the time when my undo becomes expired. After that point, for 900 seconds, nobody is going to overwrite on that undo or expired undo. Is that guaranteed? No. Can we make it guaranteed? Yes. So that is what we are discussing now. Okay, so how do you do it? You just specify alter tablespace Name of the table space, let us say undo 1. So alter table space undo retention guarantee. This is the command that you will execute from this point onward. From this point onward, if your undo retention parameter is set to 900 seconds, then nobody, that means no other transaction, will overwrite on the expired undos for 900 seconds. For expired undos for 900 seconds.
So guarantee is not mentioned, then it will overwrite.
If this is no guarantee, then it will overwrite even before the 900 second period. Even before the 900 second period. So that is what this guarantee means. So one smaller point, so this is the retention issue. Another smaller point is, not smaller point, I think maybe it is important. As I said, there are undo segments in the undo table space. They are created when the database gets created. There is one special undo segment. One special undo segment which is not inside this undo table space, but that is inside the system table space. That is inside the system table space, and that is so special that it is used only by one user, and that user is sys. Anytime a user sys has to do a rollback or has to do an insert, update or delete, forget about rollback, has to do an insert or update or delete which is going to generate his own undo, then that undo segment is, the name of that undo segment is system, and that is inside a table space system. The name of that undo segment is system, and that undo segment is sitting inside a table space system. What is the purpose of that? Only for the user sys. That is what the purpose is. And in some rare situations when your undo table space is corrupt, at that time you can use the system table space there. Sorry, system undo segment. So we'll see that during the backup and recovery, that if undo table space gets corrupted, then what do we do? Then at that time Oracle does use the system undo segment. So that is sitting,
Oracle does use
the system undo segment when the undo table space is corrupted. Now, so this is an undo retention. I also talked about system undo segment, which is used only by user sys. And now the last thing about undo is how to size the undo, which is a very critical thing. Size of undo. That means undo table space. Should undo table space be 5 megabytes like what you have created, or should it be 5 gigabytes? Okay, so that depends on your database activity. If you are going to do huge amount of deletes, then you will require a huge undo table space. If you are going to commit, after every one single delete, then you need less amount of undo table space. Also, so this is the sizing. How frequently you're going to commit. That is going to decide the size. So what is the size of your transaction? That is number one. Number two is what is your undo retention? Your transaction size may be small, but your undo retention is very long, maybe 2 days. I haven't seen anybody keeping the undo retention for that long, but your undo retention is very long. Then what? That means for that period nobody should be overwriting your expired undos, and therefore you require more and more space for undo. So these things, the size of your transaction and the undo retention, will decide the size of your undo table space. So what is going to decide the size is equal to size of the transaction and the undo retention. So these are the two things that will kind of decide this thing. So where do we find this information from? There is a table called $undo stat. In that v dollar undo stat, there is a parameter which is I keep on maximum query length, undo blocks. There is a column called as undo blks, undo blocks. These are the undo blocks. So this is the column name, undo blks, and these are the undo block required for our undo transactions. It is collected, it is a statistics that Oracle keeps on collecting, and you need to go and take a look at this number, find out the bigger, and this statistics is collected for every 10 minutes. So for the last 10 minutes the undo blocks that were required were 3000. Then the 10 minutes after that, undo blocks required were only 1000 because less DMN happened. Then undo blocks required for the next 10 minute segment is 5000. So likewise, you go through that analysis and find out like what is the maximum requirement of undo blocks, and this is undo blocks required per second. So from that view, v dollar undo stat, you find out this column, and if this column says 5000 undo blocks were required per second. Okay, this is the biggest number out of all those numbers. Then you use this number. If your undo retention is around 900, okay, so this is per second. You require them to be, for 900 seconds, and the size of your database block is 8K. Then whatever this thing comes out to be is at least the minimum requirement for your undo. Because this is what was required per second, maximum value per second, retention is this much, and the size of the block is this much. These are the undo blocks required per second. This information can be found out from undo stat. So obviously when you are creating a database, you don't know this information. So you have to go with certain assumptions when you are creating a database. And then as you do more and more monitoring, then you figure out whether what we have sized is enough or not. Obviously, I think your 5 megabyte may not seem to be more accurate if you are having a lot of deletes and other activities, DML activities. So this is how you size undo. Now this formula is actually now this is how everybody used to calculate in the older time and also current time also. But there are certain programs called as advisor programs. Advisor programs are the programs which will go and see the statistics from certain data dictionary views. Based on the statistics, based on their computing formulas, they will give you that the advice that we have for the undo size is 10 gigabytes. So the advisor program uses the same logic, or you can go and do the same calculation yourself. In 10G and further releases, we actually don't say that go and do this thing yourself manually. You use the advisors. Those are the programs, graphical programs. We'll see that using our OEM, Oracle Enterprise Manager. So this is what the sizing of undo is. And I think this is the last discussion for undo. ठीक है.